What simple mistake has ended lives? I read an article a long time ago about an aircraft maintenance worker not removing a piece of tape that was put in place to protect a sensor during cleaning. The pilot failed to notice during the pre-flight inspection. More than 100 people died in the plane crash. It was multiple sensors apparently. Pilot had no altitude, air speed or air pressure. Fun fact, those all come from the same sensor, the static pressure port. Although there are typically at least 3 static ports for redundancy, so yes, they covered all the static ports. Archduke Franz Ferdinand's driver making a wrong right turn down a side street. World War I had a lot of simple mistakes that cost lots of lives. We're going into battle like we always do, riding a horse in full dress uniform, with all its colors, and large plumes for better command and control. Basic fact of war. People always try to fight it like the last one. What last one? The last really big one. Leaving the stranded vehicle on the road in winter and trying to walk to get help. It happens in rural parts of our province once or twice a year, and they find the body a few days later. They get disoriented and freeze. I grew up in Minnesota, and when I got my first car during the winter, my dad told me, "Unless you can see the lights of a building, don't get out of the car." No DAC winters. No car left our driveway without 40 pounds of kitty litter, 2 gallons of water, toilet paper, space blankets, candles, flashlight, and enough Snickers bars to keep you from dying. It was the 90s, we weren't perfect. The 2 things I learned first when driving, growing up in Wisconsin. 1. What does a car feel like when it loses traction? 2. Don't get out of the car in winter unless you can see your destination. Baby in the back seat. I'm in childcare, and I'll do some insane things to remember there's a baby back there. Take my shoes off, put my phone back there, dirty diaper as a reminder. People forget. It doesn't matter if you're a mom, nanny, father, nurse, firefighter. It happens. And yet there's always someone who says, "I'd never forget my baby," and every year babies die because of it. I didn't realize how easy this was. There are so many examples of this. It was a change in the routine. It's unbelievable how much muscle memory we use on our daily tasks, and when one thing is off. Especially if you are sleep deprived, as might happen if you have a baby. When my son was about 7 months old in the middle of the summer, I was running a bit late for work and I was supposed to take my son to daycare, which my wife usually did. After I got him in his car seat, he fell back asleep and I got distracted and ended up driving the 45 minutes to my workplace. By this time it was 7:30 a.m. and the temp was already in the low 70s. So I grabbed my laptop from the passenger seat and got out of my SUV, and as I started to walk away I had this feeling that I had forgot something, so I did the keys, wallet, phone pat down check and turned around to look at the car, and then I saw my son in his car seat. If I had kept walking I wouldn't have found him until I went for lunch, and by that time the temperature would be in the 80s and the inside of the car would be up to 100 or more. That was 22 years ago, and I still have nightmares about it. That all heart attacks have the exact same symptoms. They don't. Trust yourself and seek help ASAP if you are afraid that you're having a heart attack. Women also tend to have different symptoms than men, so it's good to be familiar with those. Women are much more likely to get less common symptoms such as indigestion, shortness of breath, and back pain, sometimes even in the absence of obvious chest discomfort. My mom had very mild symptoms with her heart attack. She rated the pain as unimpressive. Her nurse coworkers dragged her to the ER. She's doing very well. Edited to add, this was a few years ago, so I don't remember the clinical criteria that led to her being brought to cath lab. I'm very grateful to the doctors that took care of her. Mixing cleaning ingredients. My dad was trying to unclog his kitchen drain and mix drain cleaners by adding one then adding another a few minutes later. It started bubbling, and he began coughing intensely. I heard him coughing from the other room, saw what happened, and opened the nearby window to get rid of the chlorine gas he just produced. I forgot there was a large hive of wasps that had moved into that window, and they did not appreciate this unexpected interruption. I took him to the emergency room for the gas exposure, and it was tough explaining that the wasp stings were not why we were there. OMG, that must have been incredibly hard to handle at the ER. But at the same time I can't help but think that it would make for a hilarious slapstick skit. like a guy with a fake arrow through his head trying to get treated for a heart attack. It's worrying when you see those videos on TikTok etc. of influencers mixing a ton of different cleaning products just for the sake of views. It is so dangerous. Some of those products are dangerously caustic just by themselves. Mixing them with other strong chemicals could be, and are, fatal, and it's concerning that it's become trendy on social media. The Goiânia accident. A court in Brazil had been made aware that there was an unsecured source of radiation in a condemned cancer treatment clinic due to be torn down, but did not let anyone safely remove it. A scrap collector went into the building, found the radiation source, broke it open, and found glowing blue powder inside. No one knew it was extremely radioactive cesium powder, and the glowing blue light emitted by the powder was beautiful. It was spread around much of the local city before reports of widespread radiation sickness prompted government emergency action. Multiple people died of radiation poisoning, including one 6-year-old girl. As an additional butthole clencher, the fire department very nearly threw the bag holding the remaining powder into the local river. Such a terrible incident. I use this as an example in training I sometimes give. If you don't know what something is, just don't touch it. Not having a carbon monoxide detector. Long ago I was on the crew of a submarine older than me. We went into the shipyard. One of the planned jobs was to install some new equipment that required a hull penetration. One Friday afternoon, a shipyard worker drilled a 1/8-inch pilot hole through the hull, intending to come back on Monday to finish the job. The job got cancelled, he got reassigned, and the hole remained. It was covered with duct tape to keep dirt out. The painters went ahead and sprayed over the tape. How deep can a piece of duct tape plus paint hold on a dive? About 218 feet. Before you ask, yes, we survived. Oh, phew, I thought you died. I did, but I got better. Holy Moses. I'm a bit impressed at the strength of that tape. Mao's idea to get rid of sparrows. In short, China's great leader Mao had calculated that sparrows eat grain, and if China got rid of them, they would have more food. So they did indeed decimate the sparrow population. They did not consider that sparrows eat lots of insects as well, which started to thrive, including locusts. The locust ate the grain. Famine. Between 16 and 30 million people died. When he recognized his mistake, he asked the Soviet Union for help and they secretly shipped sparrows to China. This is a bit a stretch though. Lots of factors led to the famine. Lots of mistakes were made. But of all of them, this was probably the most obviously stupid one. A bit off topic, but still a funny, interesting story. Some time ago in India, the government awarded money for every cobra killed to decrease the cobra population. As a result, people started cobra farms. When the government found out their plan failed, they stopped giving money for dead cobras. This led to all the farmers releasing their worthless snakes back in the wild. In the end, there were more cobras than before. Makes me think of a story I heard. I'm not sure if it's true or not. In the Dark Ages, when the church thought cats were spreading the plague, they had them killed, which led to rats thriving. Rats were the real carriers, so without cats to keep their population in check, they spread it all across Europe. Not wearing a seatbelt. Same for helmets on a motorbike. Quality helmets. My dad was wearing a cheap helmet when he had his accident. He lived for a week in a coma. Had he been wearing a better quality helmet, he probably would have lived. I'm sorry for the loss of your father. Around 1977 I was 17 and buying my first motorcycle. Was looking at helmets with cool paint jobs that matched my new bike. On the wall they had a handwritten sign that said, "If you have a $20 head, buy a $20 helmet." Opted for a decidedly uncool white bell helmet that cost about $100. A lot of money for a teenager in the 70s. About 6 months later I was on a concrete 2-lane highway going about 60 when a truck decided to pass me just as an 18-wheeler was coming in the other direction. About the time his passenger door was even with my handlebars, he swerved into me. Kept it upright for maybe 30 foot when my front wheel caught a huge pothole. Landed absolutely square on the center of my head. Beautiful bike was totaled and the helmet was just crushed. But it absorbed the energy of a 50 miles per hour plus impact and died protecting me. Was always thankful that I took that little sign to heart. Also applicable to bicycles. It takes very little impact to your skull to fuck shit right up. Pulling the knife out of someone. Yeah, I did that, but it was a broken tree branch that had impaled my leg. Without even thinking, I pulled it out. Blood started gushing, so I pulled off my shirt and tied it into a pressure bandage. I was lucky I didn't bleed to death. Always treat a gun like it's loaded. Never point a gun at something you don't want to destroy. Never put your finger on the trigger unless you want to fire the gun. A really good friend of mine lost her brother that way. Guy was just cleaning his gun and didn't check to see that there was a round in the chamber. My mom's older brother had a friend over after school. My pap had left a shotgun on the table that he was intending to clean. When my gram came home from errands, she found her son, sitting in the chair and facing the TV, with no face left. His friend had been playing with the gun and accidentally shot him in the face because the kid assumed it wasn't loaded. They were both 11-year-old boys in the late 70s, so I'm sure this wasn't necessarily uncommon. Not being honest with doctors about Viagra. It has many dangerous drug interactions and can cause a lot of problems from what I've heard. Trust me, the doctor ain't gonna judge you guys. They have seen much more embarrassing things. And it would suck to die because you wanted to hide something just for it to be later stated in your death certificate. Not being honest with doctors. You could stop there. Seriously. Tell doctors everything, even that thing you think means nothing. Tell the cops nothing. Tell lawyers and doctors everything. I worked at a tire place for a summer, and the first thing they told me was, "See that torque wrench? One mistake with this, and you can kill a whole family in a matter of seconds." I thought, well, better take this thing seriously. Man, for a second I was thinking, fuck, you'd have to swing that thing around fast to take out an entire family. And just blue screened on the idea of changing a tire. There have been too many instances of rock climbers rappelling off of the ends of their ropes, which could have been easily avoided by tying stopper knots at the ends of their ropes. Ignoring signs when cave diving. Bitch, they put a Grim Reaper on it, turn around. Edit, actually, cave diving to begin with. Fucking crazy people. Bunch of guys were working on an LNG line, and when they cut over to the new line, the pressure regulator sensors were still on the old, disconnected, line, so the system automatically started to boost the pressure up as it was sensing low pressure into the LNG lines while the sensors continues to be on a completely isolated system, causing multiple houses to basically explode due to unexpected high pressure in the system. All thanks to some idiot town council wanting to save money by not having the proper professionals work on the system. I'm a firefighter in Massachusetts. I responded up there on the task force the next day. We went door to door in darkness, forcing entry to homes to check for gas all night. Surreal being in a city you know no one and nothing about 40 miles from home, having to use cell phones to navigate around with and call for assistance, and nothing but a flashlight and floodlights on the truck to illuminate your way. People that didn't evacuate would pop out of the dark that you weren't expecting. There's a super famous example which got made into a film eventually, I think, called Open Water. But the original story was a yacht was found sailing adrift with a baby aboard and no crew anywhere to be seen. No signs of panic were found. The baby was dehydrated but otherwise fine. Eventually it was assumed that whilst at sea they went for a swim. The sides of yachts stick out of water quite high in place, but on most boats the stern is lowered so you can climb into and out of the yacht from a tender, small dinghy. This yacht was different, and had a ladder lowered from the back. This was either up or missing. But they couldn't get back on the boat, and eventually drowned or were attacked by predators. Now I never jump in without thinking about this. Because you can't ever guarantee the person behind won't do the same. Imagine trying everything to get back to your screaming baby mere feet away, and just being out of reach. It'd get dark. The wind might pick up and carry the boat away. Those final moments would be agony from such a simple mistake. My Navy friend said he heard a distress signal in the early hours of the AM in the Atlantic when it was still dark. He took control of the ship, and when they arrived 20 or so minutes later, all they found was debris. He beats himself up about it because the girl sounded so distraught over the radio. The signal was blotchy, and she was cutting in and out. They never found out who it was that was lost. My friend said if you are in the middle of the ocean without any flotation device that you only have 15 minutes or so before you succumb due to hypothermia and the ensuing exhaustion. Edit, specificity of what ocean he was in, and grammar. NASA executives overriding engineers on the launch of the Space Shuttle Challenger. The impact of a quick fix for motor vehicle engine, knocking, in 1921. The true death toll is too difficult to extrapolate, but it really did a number on humanity. It led to all kinds of problems, including increased crime rates due to neurological toxicity. A statistically significant correlation has been found between the usage rate of leaded gasoline and violent crime. The violent crime curve virtually tracks the lead exposure curve with a 22-year time lag. This is becoming more common knowledge, but for anyone that didn't know, leaded gas was invented by Thomas Midgley Jr., who also invented CFCs. Some historians believe that he had a more negative impact on Earth's atmosphere than any other single organism that has ever lived. Thomas Midgley Jr. invented also chlorine-fluorine carbon, CFC, freons, which turned out to be quite bad for the ozone layer. There is actually pretty good video about him by Veritasium on YouTube called "The Man Who Accidentally Killed the Most People in History." Murdered millions, sped up the decay of society, ruined the health of generations of people, and destroyed the ozone layer. Just by accident. So next time you think you've done something really fucking stupid, just think of old Midgley Jr., the accidental supervillain. Edit. New shit has come to light. He was just a regular old supervillain. The Herald of Free Enterprise not closing the bow door. 193 drowned. That is insane. Makes you wonder how someone messes up that bad. Per passengers. The immediate cause of the capsizing was found to be negligence by the assistant bosun, who was asleep in his cabin when he should have been closing the bow door. However, the official inquiry placed more blame on his supervisors and a general culture of poor communication in Townsend Thoresen. Crew died too. I remember as a kid thinking it was cool and very safety conscious how every cross-channel ferry had as the final announcement from the bridge before departure, "We can confirm the bow door has been closed and sealed." And, looking back, I'm super glad I had no idea why they were making that so explicit. Some homeopathic medicine for babies still contained deadly amounts of belladonna. Some babies died. Apparently, they did not dilute it as extremely as they were supposed to in homeopathy. As a healthcare worker, giving the wrong amount of insulin. Therac 25, the world's deadliest software error, cost several radiation patients their lives by administering lethal amounts of radiation, and for a while, the doctors didn't even know. Therac 25 suffered a particularly vexing sort of error known as a race condition. Essentially, the circuit required multiple inputs in a particular sequence, but sometimes the timing of that sequence could get thrown out of whack and it would lead to all sorts of nonsensical output. This is less than ideal when all you're doing is manipulating pixels. But when your software is handling radiation beams, you really don't want this to happen. Even more vexing is that race conditions are frequently Heisenbergs, which can vanish altogether when one attempts to study them. If you don't have a good idea of what's causing the error, you may never cotton on to what sort of bad input is required to test it. Under those circumstances, it's easy to write them off as imaginary, only to then find basing test dummies on the proportions of the average man. Many women and children have died in car crashes because the seatbelt is up too high across their body, or the airbag hits at the wrong angle because it was designed to expand to accommodate a taller person. Just wish someone figured out not everyone is the same size before people died. Cutting towards yourself, rather than away. Being on statins for high cholesterol plus amiodarone for cardiac issues and having a glass of grapefruit juice before going to bed. Smoking in bed. Former paramedic. Being on pretty much any medication and drinking grapefruit juice, it's insane how many medications are affected by it. I take sertraline. Edit. Jesus Christ, I didn't expect this comment to blow up. This is why grapefruit juice is literally banned from hospitals. It affects everything. Because it messes with a liver enzyme that breaks down a large amount of meds. Not using a fucking turn signal. Thank you for the award. LOL. Back when I was in middle school, we had a carbon monoxide leak on a state testing day. Someone was supposed to test for carbon monoxide over the weekend, but the guy showed up at the high school and not the middle school, and they ended up having to reschedule the whole thing. When they found out about the leak, everyone was in the middle of state testing and they didn't want to evacuate the classrooms. Plus it was raining. So they held a shelter in place and tried to handle the situation since it was in a room away from the classrooms. But then kids started passing out in the classrooms and vomiting and stuff. Several ambulances, 2 hours in the rain, and several school buses taking us all to stay in the elementary school building later. 3 students and 1 teacher's assistant died, and over 30 students ended up in the hospital. My mom came and got me from the elementary school and took me to the hospital. I was okay, but I went home and passed out for almost 2 days. My mom was about ready to drag me back, but then I started to feel better. All around? Fucking crazy experience. Treat the ocean like it's just some water. Hell, most bodies of water can be pretty dangerous. Not checking and planning for the weather. Welcome to Mount Washington. Please don't die up here. It's not very tall and you can literally drive to the top on a paved road, but somehow manages to sustain a death rate entirely out of proportion. Empty Washington is a bit of a special case. It can have world-class cold and wind storms even with very balmy weather at the base. In midsummer, you have to pack for sudden winter weather no matter how nice it is at the trailhead. Almost any simple mistake can end a life if you're an anesthesiologist. That's how my grandpa died in his early 60s. My neighbor let his 15-year-old drive on the interstate coming back from a Florida vacation because he was tired. He crossed the line, flipped the vehicle, and the entire family ultimately didn't make it. Not looking both ways when crossing a street. I once listened to a guy telling the story of how, when he fell down the stairs, he desperately clutched onto the glass of wine he was carrying, in order not to break it, instead of grabbing the railing to stop his fall. He survived with a broken hip, but I imagine lots of people probably have the same weird instinct, and some may not be able to tell the tale. I once fell down my metal spiral staircase, with a concrete landing, with a glass of chocolate milk in my hand. For some bizarre reason, my primary instinct was to protect my chocolate milk at all costs, including attempting to keep the cup as level as possible to avoid spillage. I was battered and bruised, but I made it to the bottom without spilling a single drop of the damn chocolate milk. To be fair, it wasn't my first time falling down those stairs. Everyone who's ever lived or visited overnight in this house has fallen down them at least once. I'd guess at least 40 to 50 individual people have fallen down these stairs, many of them on multiple occasions. I don't know what it was about these stairs. Maybe it was the nice smooth metal offering absolutely no traction, but people just fall on them. Nobody has gotten seriously injured though. You get bruised, maybe break a toe or your foot, but you're fine. I remember hearing somewhere that the first thing you should do if you fall is to toss whatever you're carrying. But what if holding baby? The Halifax explosion. December 1917, a ship with a hell of a lot of explosives ran into another ship that was traveling on the wrong side of the shipping lanes. An explosion the equivalent of 3 kts of TNT killed nearly 2,000 people, caused a tsunami, and injured 9,000 people. Keeping in mind the recent Beirut explosion was close to 1 kt of TNT. If I remember correctly, this was the largest man-made explosion in human history, right up until the invention of the atomic bomb. Shaking a vending machine. 6 people a year die from falling vending machines, and 5 of those are insurance investigators, so I take this very seriously. People outdoors getting amazed when their hair stands up during a thunderstorm. P.S. It means you're about to die. Doing fentanyl once destroyed my life for 3-ish years. I was a complete shell and zombie. Almost died too, overdosed 4 times. Lucky I got my shit together, and will be 5 months sober in 2 days. Congrats, friend, I'm proud of you. Clapping hands. Not installing smoke detectors. Helmet. Funny anecdote. When Massachusetts passed a law to require helmets on motorcycles, organ transplants went down significantly because there were less deaths in motorcycles accidents. They were the best donors, young, and died because of a blow to the head, leaving other organs intact often. Sadly, only New Hampshire cares about organ donations now. Sigh. Removing the weight from crush injuries after the 20 minutes has passed. Many people die due to poisoning. If they get the required injection, there's a far better chance of survival. Can you explain why? Just curious, I don't hear about stuff like that often enough. Not washing hands between births. Not washing hands between autopsies and live births. If you don't wash your hands for 9 months, you have a problem. In 1854, a woman named Sarah Lewis threw a diaper from her dying baby into a London cesspool, resulting in cholera killing 616 people after it contaminated a popular well. Graphite-tipped control rods and the AZ-5. Only 3.6 Röntgen. Not great, not terrible. Nigerian Airlines Flight 2120, operated by Nation Air, departed Jeddah, Saudi Arabia, after a maintenance worker reinflated a tire with air instead of nitrogen. The tire heated up, burst, and caught fire during the takeoff roll. The landing gear was retracted into the aircraft and burned the airfract from the inside out. The fire caused a mid-air structural failure shortly before the pilots could return to Jeddah. My father's first wife was a flight attendant on that flight. Her and 260 others died. It remains the most deadly aviation accident involving a Canadian airline. I looked this up and this is inaccurate. They didn't reinflate the tires at all, they just falsified that they did. There was no nitrogen available, so they just ran them underinflated. That's what caused the tires to heat up and catch fire on takeoff. It wasn't a simple mistake, it was a serious breach of safety protocol. Today I learned plane tires are filled with nitrogen. The guys who accidentally dropped the Demon Core. It's also weird that it happened twice. The Demon Core didn't get dropped in the incidents that killed scientists. One guy dropped a neutron reflective brick on it. The other slipped and let the neutron reflective half-sphere he was holding fully shut around the core. I was working alone and fell off a ladder beside an empty shaft where stairs used to be. I fell 20 feet off the ladder down the shaft. I caught myself on a railing that had been left behind and hit the floor below. I got off really lucky. I was bruised up and it took about 20 minutes till I could get up. If that railing wasn't there, I was probably dead because I would have fallen 2 more floors to the basement. Also saw a guy who also fell off a ladder. He was 3 steps up. Smashed his head and got perma-brain damage. Oily paint staining rags will combust. Per the internets, spontaneous combustion of oily rags occurs when rag or cloth is slowly heated to its ignition point through oxidation. A substance will begin to release heat as it oxidizes. If this heat has no way to escape, like in a pile, the temperature will rise to a level high enough to ignite the oil and ignite the rag or cloth. My dad worked in construction and this had happened on job sites a time or two. Art student here. Someone threw away some old nasty rag that had years' worth of oil paint and turpentine, used for thinning the paint down and also for cleaning it off your skin, into the bin. Trash gets taken outside to the big can, which is sitting directly in the sun. One day, the thing fucking exploded. Luckily no one was hurt, but it was insane. Blood transfusions not being screened for various diseases, but now is. With AIDS, the problem was that at first they didn't know how to detect it or keep it out, and they weren't even sure that it was transmitted by blood in the first place. They quickly came up with a way to treat blood products so if there was anything there it would be neutralized. In the meantime, they kept using the stuff that might have been contaminated because it was either that or nothing. The evil part came afterwards when they had a new safe product and a stockpile of the old contaminated stuff, and the business people ignored what the science people were saying and instead of destroying the stockpile decided to sell it around the world. What simple mistake has ended lives? Leave a comment and subscribe to the channel if you want to see more videos like this one.